One of the most unexpected twists in the Middle East just happened. Israel launched major attacks on Iran on June 13. In response, Iran retaliated strongly, so strongly that the US had to intervene by striking Iran's nuclear sites. Normally, US involvement would escalate the conflict even further. But surprisingly, the war ended shortly after Iran launched counterstrikes on US bases in Qatar and Iraq. So, what exactly brought this war to an end? Will peace actually last in the region? And how could this 12-day war shape the future of the Middle East? So, what actually happened during the war? It began with major Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear and military sites. In response, Iran launched a counterattack using missiles and drones. Reportedly, Iran fired 550 ballistic missiles and thousands of smaller missiles and drones. Israel claimed it intercepted 90% of the missiles and 99% of the drones. Despite these defenses, Iran managed to hit key targets, including a power station, an oil refinery, a biolab, and several other strategic locations. On the other side, Israel reportedly carried out 145 aerial strikes on Iran, involving over 1,000 sorties. They dropped thousands of munitions on hundreds of targets, including nuclear sites, air defense systems, military bases, and according to Israeli claims, they killed at least 30 senior Iranian military commanders and 15 top Iranian nuclear scientists. The US involvement, striking Iran's key nuclear sites, along with Iran's counterattacks on US bases, made it seem like the war was spiraling out of control. But then, surprisingly, a ceasefire was announced, brokered by none other than the US itself. Israel and the US were both claiming to have the upper hand. So the big question is, if they were really winning, why did they suddenly stop? Apparently, the major attacks on Iran's nuclear and missile production sites made it seem like the US and Israel had achieved their objectives. But their real goal, to create instability in Iran and possibly trigger regime change, failed badly. Their aim was to install a pro-Western government through chaos, one that they could control remotely to achieve all other goals more effectively. Here's the truth. Iran isn't run by one man or a single party. It's a system, a network of elite clerics and military-backed groups who've built their power and legitimacy over decades. Even if someone killed the supreme leader, it wouldn't collapse the regime. They've mastered the art of using religion and anti-Western sentiment to rally the public. So even during war, the country didn't fall apart. People may criticize their leaders, but when foreign bombs start falling, they stand united. As far as the destruction of Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities is concerned, there's no doubt these programs were targeted and may have been set back by several years, but they didn't collapse, as some claimed. Iran says it had long anticipated such strikes. That's why it reportedly evacuated nuclear materials and personnel and sealed off entrance points at key sites. As a result, only surface-level damage was sustained, while the underground facilities remained intact. The areas where Iran's nuclear sites are located have naturally multi-layered terrain, which acts like a shock absorber, protecting underground structures. The IAEA confirmed that no radiation leakage occurred after the strikes, further backing Iran's claim that no nuclear material was present at the sites during the attacks. Even Pentagon reports suggested that the damage was not as extensive as initially claimed. Satellite imagery before the attacks showed unusual transportation activity, indicating that Iran might have relocated sensitive materials in advance. There are also reports suggesting that Iran has secret nuclear storage facilities elsewhere. As for the missile program, Israel did carry out precise strikes on a few missile factories and storage depots, but Iran still managed to fire back with precision and force until the very end. Their strong retaliation proved that their arsenal was far from crippled. While the Israeli strikes may have slowed down missile production, the program is still very much alive. The IRGC leader they said had been killed appeared on TV just a few days later. In short, while the US and Israel did hit Iran hard, many of their claims are questionable. They haven't achieved anything clearly credible or decisive, especially not the kind of victory they likely hoped for when starting this war. So, why did the US and Israel suddenly pull out without securing a clear victory? As far as we know, they don't usually end wars without completely destroying their rivals. Now this is where it gets interesting. Despite all their firepower, both Israel and the US were forced to rethink their strategy. Iran's retaliation was far stronger than expected, proving that Iran wasn't about to kneel anytime soon. Israel seemed to have rushed into this war, while the US seemed unwilling to get too involved. The US airstrikes, in fact, looked more like a face-saving gesture to support Israel rather than a full commitment. On top of that, fears that China and Russia might exploit the chaos and threaten US interests in the region made Washington even more cautious. So, instead of dragging the conflict into a long, bloody, and uncertain war, the US pushed for a quick ceasefire, saving face for both itself and Israel. So, what do we make of all this? Sure, the bombs have stopped, for now, but the core issues still burning. Israel didn't clearly achieve its goals. Iran's nuclear program was hit but not destroyed, and if no new nuclear deal is signed, Iran might come out even more aggressive than before. It's hard to say right now who truly came out on top, but the events in the coming weeks and months will surely reveal the answer. If Iran ends up signing a new nuclear deal or agrees to scale down its program, it may signal a weakened position. But if we see an acceleration of Iran's nuclear activities and a more defiant tone, that would indicate Iran feels stronger, and this could lead to a new wave of proxy wars, or worse, another full-blown conflict like the one we saw in June 2025.